Well, of course, it's not just the markets that have been tested this year. Investors like you are having to navigate all of this noise too. So who better to do that with than the broadcaster, author and behavioural expert, Simon Mundie. Thank you very much, Simon, for joining us. Simon, how do you do this? How do you gain the mental edge and maintain that mental edge? Because it's tough. It's wild times out there in the markets.
Yeah, look, there's a lot of uncertainty. There's obviously issues with tariffs, wars, the backdrop of AI. So there's a lot going on. And that uncertainty can really discombobulate a lot of people, whether you're in investing, whether you're in high performance of any kind. And so something that can be really worth considering is developing what I would call the inner game. And that inner game is really your capacity to stay calm even when there's chaos around you, chaos outside, but also some chaos inside, because we've all got a chatterbox in the head. We're not going to stop that, but it's about learning how to manage that and deal with that in a skillful manner, particularly during turbulent times. And so it can be really helpful to have a bit of context around how the brain works in terms of, you've got two hemispheres of the brain. If you picture a brain, left hemisphere, right hemisphere, and they see the world and they understand the world and react very differently. And so the left brain, the left hemisphere, is basically a pattern recognition machine. It craves certainty, but as we know, reality does not tend to oblige, particularly during these times. It does not see the big picture. It sees the trees rather than the forest. So it breaks reality down into categories, judgments, and beliefs. So if I say I'm British, I'm only British relative to anyone else who's not British. If everyone in the world was British, that would be meaningless. So the left brain is the seat of language, concepts, and labels. And I can show you this in real time. So if I said to you, Victoria, have a look around and just tell me what you see.
Right in front of me, I see you, vision before me. I also see a fiddly fig that might need a bit of water, and I see the lighting, I see the cameras, I see our crew here, and I know behind the camera, of course, is our audience watching and wanting to know what the answer is. What have I missed?
Our audience, by the
way. Well,
I
can visualise you. I know you're there.
So yes, all great stuff. However, one thing you did not say, and one thing no one says, is the space of the room.
Okay.
Now,
Go on.
You're wondering
what
where I'm going with this.
Yes.
So the left thinking brain sees things within the big picture. The right hemisphere sees the big picture, so can see and understand space because it sees the entirety. But the thing is, the left brain, as I said, breaks down into categories, judgments, beliefs, while the right brain sees the big picture. It's also far more comfortable with uncertainty. It lives in the present moment, and it doesn't deal in terms of language and concepts. It deals in terms of intuition and feelings. And understanding how these two hemispheres of the brain react can be really helpful, because the left brain can absolutely lead us on a merry dance when it comes up with stories to interpret the chaos outside and inside. But if we can tap into the intuition and the presence and the observing power of the right hemisphere, we can get a bit of space from the left brain and not get led down the garden path. Let me just quickly share a story to put some meat on the bone, so to speak. Right. So a few decades ago, and I know you do neuroscience, so you'll know all about this. There were what are known as split brain patients. So there were people who had to have the hemispheres of their brain separated for medical reasons surgically. They were fine. But then what happened was doctors noticed that the different way the hemispheres worked seemed to be a bit more pronounced. So researchers got interested and they did these tests with these split brain patients. And what they did was they showed instructions that only the right brain, so the intuitive part of the brain that doesn't deal with language but can read, could see. And one of the instructions was to laugh, right? And so they showed this instruction to laugh. The people started laughing, just as you are now. And all so far so good. But then it got interesting because the researchers started to ask the question, so why did you start laughing? Now, the correct answer given by the language center of the left brain should have been, I don't know, because the left part of the brain hadn't seen the instruction. But rather than say, I don't know, it came up with a plausible reason, which was, oh, I'm laughing because I can't believe you do this for a job. What a way to earn a living, right? Entirely plausible, very confident, completely inaccurate, right? And this is really important to know because we've all got a left brain interpreter in our head whipping up stories about what's going on inside our feelings, but also going on outside. And it can absolutely lead us astray if we don't know about it, which is why it's really valuable to get a bit of context and understand this right brain that can observe and see the big picture, because then we can recognize that that voice in the head isn't who we are. It can lead us astray. We don't have to buy into the stories, which means no panicking during times of uncertainty.
Okay, so it's about sort of gaining and maintaining that level of sort of perspective. How do you do that? How do you train that? We've got sort of lots of investors watching us now. How do you sort of train that muscle and train that right sort of side of your brain to be the one that is responding rather than reacting to what's going on, the noise around you?
Well, that's a great question. And first thing is to understand that it does whip up stories. So the split brain patient example I've given you is really valuable to just know that that's what your thinking mind does. But my background is from sport, and sport is such an instructive arena to look at this stuff. So we're obviously, Wimbledon's on at the moment. I'll talk about the pros in a minute, but tennis is my favourite sport. Every Friday night I go and play tennis. I have a set of singles, completely inconsequential. No one cares. But my left brain does not know that. It gets itself in a right tiz, and it will start saying things like, oh, you're going to win. Oh, no, you're going to lose. Why did you miss that? Make sure you don't double fault. And just observing that and knowing that that's what it does takes away a lot of the pressure. And so I'm not falling into the trap of believing it. Now, it's easy to think that when you get to the elite level, that doesn't happen. You watch someone like Novak Djokovic playing, you think, oh, he's not going to be having those same thoughts about hitting a double fault. But that's not true at all. And I spoke to Novak about this, and he said, look, I think it's a very damaging idea that we should think positively all the time. Like, we're human beings. We're going to have fear, we're going to have doubt, and we're going to have that chatter in the mind. But the real skill then comes from being able to be centered, even as there's chaos outside, in his case on center court, but chaos inside in terms of your mind going, oh my God, what if this and what if that? Being able to stay centered. So step one is knowing that it does that. It's normal. It's not abnormal if your mind jumps from one thing to the next and gets panicky. Number two, in Novak's case, what he does, he talks about mindful breathing. So he comes into his body. That would be, he would feel the rise and fall of his breath. But if I said to you right now, can you feel the sensations of your feet on the floor, right? The sensations of your body and the feet on the floor is inherently present. Right? So you're taking some of the attention away from fueling this story-making machine in the head. But then for us more amateurs, something really valuable can be when a thought comes up, like saying, oh, I'm going to hit a double fault, or I'm going to lose all my money, there's such tumult going on. Notice the thought, and then add a little prefix of, I'm noticing the thought, I'm going to lose all my money. And what that does is, it gets you out of the story. You don't have to take it seriously. It's just a thought. It's not fact. And then you can start to respond from a more a responsive rather than reactive place, because you know that the story machine in the head can go cock-a-hoot, particularly during stressful moments. So just to recap, come into your body, get a bit of distance from your thought, and then, as per Novak Djokovic, stick to your game plan. Novak goes on court with a strategy, a plan that he's thought out before the match. He doesn't ditch it at the first sign of problems. And investing or other fields, that's absolutely true too. You have a plan. When things get into choppy waters, it doesn't mean you ditch it. No, get some objectivity, stay calm, stick to your plan, and then react accordingly, but don't react in a panicked way.
This is actually something Tom was talking about. He's talking about this kind of consistent framework of which you look at sort of the fundamentals and the valuations, and it's from that long-term plan you start assessing and making decisions. But how do you, it's all very well and good, but how do you sort of develop this in a game that it becomes the outer game, it becomes the game that we all see, so that people can become the Novak Djokovic of investing? How do you go about doing that? How do you get better and better?
Yeah, well, first of all, don't aim too high. No one can become Novak overnight, right? But the first thing is, as I said, to understand that this is what's going on. You have a left brain interpreter that trying to make sense of your feelings inside and chaos outside. It's going to get in a tiz and it's going to bounce around left and right. Every time you notice that, and you bring your attention back to the present moment, come into your body, every time you get a bit of distance and go, I'm noticing a thought, every time you spot it, that gap widens and widens and widens. So it's really about just, for example, in the course of a day, you're in a queue or you're doing some emails, any chance you get, so it's not just during panic moments, to get a bit of distance from your thoughts and come into your body, start that practice, and then it can really bed in and grow over time. I mentioned about tennis, when my Friday night sessions and I enjoy watching my mind, that wasn't always the case. That mind used to torment me. Hasn't changed, only now I know that that's what it's doing. And so if I can give you a quick analogy, it's like watching a horror movie. I don't know if you're a horror movie fan,
No.
Victoria. Right. So you're watching a horror movie, right? Close up. There's blood and the guts on the screen, right? And you're lost in it. You feel fear and trepidation, right? It's a bit like then being the person in the corner of the room watching the movie, but is also able to see other people watching it. They can see the screen, so they know that it's, you know, it's a film. There are actors reading lines rather than being lost and panicked by the movie. It's the same in terms of how we relate to our thinking mind. So that when panicky, difficult moments come as an investor, right? You know your mind's going to go up and down. It's going to start panicking. You can observe that, come into the present moment, and then think about what is your long-term plan. You know, what is the discussions you've had around seeing the big picture, not just this moment of volatility. Over time, you know, we don't want to be too reactive. Come back. That is how we develop the inner game, whether it be in elite sport or indeed in investing.
That's really interesting. I think I can imagine a lot of people will be agreeing with you. I think what's quite difficult to judge is the fine balance between playing your own game, playing the inner game, but also understanding that the picture is changing and perhaps that your own strategy might need to shift a little in response to the environment. So how does it, I'm just thinking of this from a sport perspective and what you've seen over the course of your career. How do people do that within a sporting context so that they recognize that actually they're playing in a slightly different capacity to they thought they might be, so it could be injury or whatever. And because we're seeing this here, we're seeing this with Nedbank, is that they've got their long-term strategy, but they are remaining agile and active in the positions that they're taking. And so, you know, how does that play out in sport at an elite level that investors and people watching today could look at and think, okay, how do I make that balance between the sort of the short term and the long term, make it work for me?
Yeah, well, let's stick with tennis, with Novak Djokovic, okay? He's the most successful Grand Slam champion of all time. He's won 24 titles. He goes on court, he knows he's got the experience, so he's been there and he's done it. Investors will often have that same, you know, not perhaps to the same level, but that same experience in their back pocket. He will have a game plan before he goes on court. He's not going to abandon that game plan at the first sign of trouble. He'll stick to that. And so it's about differentiating between the panicky voices that are reactive, going, oh, I need to do something now, and stepping back and going, okay, I can see this is happening. I can see there's a degree of anxiety, but I'm going to stick to my plan for now. But then there is an element of feel, of intuition, of, okay, perhaps I do need to make a change. But you want to be fundamentally making that change from a place of response rather than reaction. And I think during tumultuous times, for example, when, you know, the trade stuff that's been going on in the last, you know, year or so, it's very easy to get swept along by that, whoever you are, you know, investor or not. But if you can just know that, okay, it's normal to feel a degree of anxiety, step back from it. Of course, then speak to your financial advisor, you know, but don't throw the plan out with the bathwater, so to speak. You know, respond rather than react. That's the big difference. You know, I'm reminded of, as a final thought, Warren Buffett, he said that, doesn't he? When everyone else is panicking, that's when he holds. When everyone else is relaxed, that's when he'll make a move. So he's definitely reacting from his right brain calmly rather than the left brain panicker.
That's fascinating. And it completely changes your experience of the moment too, as well as the outcome.
Absolutely. Like, it doesn't matter if you've got a busy mind. It doesn't matter if you've got even feelings of what some people would call anxiety. These are just things to be experienced moment by moment. You can still absolutely do what you need to do. You can live according to your values, to your game plan, all this stuff, even if you're in a state of sort of a relative state of anxiety or stress. It gives you that freedom to be able to stick to what you want to do, even if you don't feel exactly as you feel like you ought to feel. And that comes as a huge relief.
So, to sum up, it's notice the noise, trust the plan, and develop your own inner game. Is that right?
Yes, that's a very good way of putting it, yes. Know that you have this left brain interpreter that makes up stories like it did for the split brain patients. It's going to get panicky. You're not going to stop that. It's not about resisting it and trying to stopping it. It's about seeing that that's what it does and not getting lost in the story, stepping back and taking a more objective, calm view than getting lost, you know, in the stormy panic. And the more you do it, the easier it gets in any field, particularly something like investing through to elite performance. So that's how you be more Novak Djokovic than, you know, a first-round loser.
I was going to say Simon Mundie on a Friday night, but thank you very much, Simon. Thank you.